What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Beard and Flow Fishing Show. I'm your host, Daniel McKinney, and today I want to talk to you about fishing stick baits, more commonly known as Senkos. So, when I say stick baits or Senkos, one brand particularly comes to mind with those that know what I'm talking about, and that is the Gary Yamamoto Senko. Now, there's plenty of other brands out there. There's brands such as Big Bite Baits Company. They've got their thing called the Trick Stick. Zoom has one called the Zlinky. And there's plenty of other ones out there. Many companies have been making their rendition of the Senko, as they're commonly known as. But today I don't want to talk about the history today. I want to talk more about how to rig this bait. Now, in my last video, Finesse Fishing Techniques, I talked about wacky rigging Senkos, and I talked about Texas rigging Senkos or stick baits. Now, to start with, you want to start off looking at your worm. Hold your worm up outside of the package, and you want to look for a curve in the worm. As you see, this worm curves ever so slightly to this side. Now that's important because that is what's going to give you your action. Now when you are wacky rigging or Texas rigging, you want to make sure that curve, as we described here, is going down, because that cut is kind of like a cup. And when it falls down, it's going to be giving resistance against that natural curve of that worm, and it's going to give it more action, whether it's doing like this or it's doing rocking back and forth. Now, when we're wacky rigging, we take our wacky rig hook. This is a VMC weedless Neko rig hook. It's got these two fluorocarbon keepers, and what we're going to do is we're going to find our curve, and we're going to bend our worm in half. Find the middle right here. We're going to take this hook, we're going to go right through the middle. And there you go. There's a wacky rig worm. We're going to be fishing this on a 7-foot medium action spinning rod. Now, why is that important? Because you don't want to overdo it with a heavier action rod, and you don't want to underdo it with a too light of rod. So a medium spinning rod is my typical go-to for fishing a wacky style worm. Now, when you've got this rigged out, you cast it out, you fire it out there, and it lands in the water. First thing you want to do is let it fall just a little bit before you flip the bell on your spinning reel. Now, the reason we're going to do that is you're going to have a semi-slack line. We're going to fish this on a semi-slack line. Now, that means we're going to have a slight curve of our line in our line so that we have enough space for that worm to do its little action that it falls, because it's going to fall kind of like this and then flutter on the ends. And it's going to be enough tightness on the other side so that if we do get bit when it's falling, which you typically will, and that we'll feel it quicker, or we'll see our line jump. Because if you throw it out there and you flip the bell immediately, it's going to fall just like this. It's not going to have enough time. It's going to the action is not going to be at its peak. It's going to be at its peak when we're semi-slack, so that you can feel the bite and the worm has plenty of action falling down. Once it goes to the bottom, if you didn't get a bite, you're going to pop your rod up once, even twice, and this worm is going to do something like this. It's going to jump and kind of dance on the ends. And then you're going to let it fall on a semi-slack line. You might have to open your bell just a little bit, or even point your rod towards your bait ever so slightly, so it has that little bit of bend in your line. And it falls back down, shimmies down, and does a little wiggle on its way down. And that's how you're going to fish a wacky rig. Now, when it comes to a Texas rig, we're going to be throwing it on this. You can throw it on a EWG hook, which is an extra wide gap hook, and all that is, guys, is it looks like this hook, kind of like that right there. It's got this bend here, comes down, circles back around, and comes out straight. And this type of hook is going to be more weedless than your wacky rig hook. And you can throw it on these, or you can throw them on a more straight shank hook. These aren't going to be quite as weedless as this type of hook, but they're both great options. Now, we're going to rig this on our EWG hook, our extra wide gap hook. Make sure you look for the bend. You're going to poke your hook through like so, and then you're going to feed it up that hook just past the bend towards the eye, and you're going to take it here and you're going to give a slight bend in your worm. Now with the Zoom worms, they've got this little pocket right here for where you Texas rig your worm. It'll pop out that hook, that hole. The Gary Yamamoto's and the Big Bite Baits ones do both. Well, the Big Bite Baits has the same slot. The Gary Yamamoto does not. So the Zoom and the Big Bite Bait worm have this slot. Now we've got it Texas rigged. Now after we poked it through all the way, now you've still got this barb here slightly exposed. Your tip of your worm, your tip of your hook. So you're going to pull up on your worm, and you're going to poke the point, just the tip of that hook, back into the worm. We call that Texposing the worm. Now, my worm's a little crooked, but you can straighten that up as well. Now, once you've done that, how you're going to fish this is you're going to throw it out there, and you're going to let it fall on a semi-slack line, and it's going to fall kind of like a leaf. It's going to fall like this, or it might even shimmy like this, depending on how it lands. And you're going to let it fall all the way down and hit the bottom. If you don't get bit on your semi-slack line, what you're going to do is you're going to lift up on your rod, and that worm is going to dance up like this, and it's going to fall back down. Or you can twitch it like this, and it's going to dart back and forth kind of erratically and let it fall back down. Always let it fall back down on a semi-slack line, because it's the most vulnerable. Your bait is most vulnerable in that type of positioning, and the fish will see that, and they will take their opportunity to eat it. Now, the cool thing about the wacky rig is that you can skip this bait like a rock. Now, how do you do this? You will have on your spinning rod, it's the easiest to do so. You're going to take it, and you're going to have about a foot worth of line hanging down from the tip of your spinning rod. And it's just like casting or skipping a rock. If you've ever skipped one, you're going to come low and to the side, and you're going to look at your target. Say you've got an overhanging tree, you're going to want to scoot it right up underneath that tree. So you're going to focus on your target, and you're going to come on the side cast. You're going to come up on your side with you're still holding your line with your trigger finger here, and you got about a foot max of line hanging down, and you're going to just imagine that worm skipping across, and you're going to follow through with your cast. You're going to allow it to skip all the way, just like a rock, up underneath that cover, up underneath that hanging down tree, or even maybe it's just flat, or maybe it's a dock, and it'll skip all the way back in there. If you're skipping underneath and there's cover in there, I highly recommend a weedless option. You can fish these in a non-weedless option without these little guards here, but I would highly recommend getting some with guards and without guards, especially if you're going to be fishing around trees, grass, docks, because the worst thing that can happen is you make that perfect cast that skips beautifully up underneath that dock, and you get hung. You get hung on another piece of, you get hung on a rock, you get hung on a limb, a cable if you're fishing docks, and then you got to go back there and get it, or you got to break it off. Now with these baits, with these two different rigging techniques, on the Wacky Rig, I'm only fishing these on 8 or 10 pound test fluorocarbon typically. If I'm fishing straight line, it'll be 8 pound test, maybe 10 max, but most of the time it's 8 pound. But when I'm typically fishing these, I'm tying 8 pound test to a braided line leader, which is about 10 to 15 pound test, 20 at max. And the reason being because that diameter of braided line, it sounds like 15, 20 pound test, and you just said nothing higher than 10 or 12, but braided line is much different because there's these, it's kind of like thread. It might have a 10, 12 pound, 15 pound, 20 pound pound line rating, but it's super thin because it's these little fibers weaved in and out, and they're super small, but they have the strength of that of 10, 12, 15, 20 pound test. And I'm going to tie those two lines together to create a leader, and I can change that out. I can keep the same strength line of my main line, which is the braid, and I can change my fluorocarbon leader out, which can be 8, 10, 12 pound test line, and so it's more abrasion resistant. So that means I can throw it into thicker cover like wood, or even around docks where there might be cables, or even the pilings on the dock, which are like the posts, and they can rub near it and they won't get cut up to pieces like the braided line could be. Now, I can also change out those leader lengths. I can change out the leader material. That's why I prefer to do braid to a leader. You can also do monofilament. It's a much more cost-effective option than fluorocarbon. So we know how to fish this guy. We can skip this. I'm not really good at skipping a Texas rig version of it, but I've had a lot of success fishing these types of baits, Wacky Rig, as I mentioned in my finesse video. Now, my favorite colors are, this is green pumpkin and June bug. I don't have one of those options here. That is more of a purple color with like a green confetti inside of it. And those two are my staples on dirtier water. Yeah, I would probably lean towards the June bug color, or cleaner water, maybe towards the green pumpkin color. But there's also a third option, like a watermelon color, and that's this brighter green here. It's more of a vibrant green color. Or Zoom makes this double color here. It's a darker green on the top, like a green pumpkin, and a bottom where it's a watermelon color. But either way, they're a more natural color. Your clearer water or slightly stained colored water, like a slight stained tea, you can go for the watermelon or the green pumpkin color. But at times, that June bug will shine. So that's where we are with our Wacky Rig and our Texas Rig, our stick baits. There are other options out there which are weighted Wacky Rig hooks. You can add a weight to your Texas Rig at the when you first before you tie on your hook, you put on a bullet weight. It can be anywhere from a 1/16 ounce all the way up to an ounce. But if we're going to keep it on the finesse side, we're going to keep it even lighter, or even no weight at all. I've had the most success with a non-weighted Texas rigged Senko. I've caught good fish with that. Pond fishing, I caught a 7-pound bass. Out lake fishing, I've caught very large bass as well. So, guys, I hope this helps you out with your stick bait fishing. If you've learned anything, guys, drop me a comment. What did you learn today? Maybe even let me know what I might have missed, or what other bait options. I've only mentioned the Yamamoto Zoom and Big Bite Baits. If you have a favorite stick bait, drop it in the comments. Maybe I should let me know so I can go try it out and let you guys know what my thoughts are. But thanks again for watching, guys. Click the like, subscribe to the video, drop a comment, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next time on the Beard and Flow Fishing Show. Thanks, guys.